Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel where it's all about narcissism, narcissistic abuse, narcissistic relationships. My hope is that knowledge is power and you'll use this information to heal from these relationships. Speaking of healing, if you're interested in doing the deeper dive on healing, please go to the video notes and the link is there if you want to register or learn more about the healing program that we're doing. And if you're new to this channel, please do subscribe. So I'm going to ask you a question to start. How many of you, after a narcissistic relationship, family, partner, whatever, thought that the answer was to move away? When the relationship is done, we'll move away, or I'm just going to move away, right? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this idea that maybe the best thing to do in a narcissistic relationship is just move far, far away. So this whole idea that I'm just going to move away, it's something that cuts through people's experience with narcissistic abuse all the time. Again, that's why I asked that question. I'd be curious to see in the comments how many of you did move far away to get away from a narcissistic ex or a friend, or did you end up moving far away from your narcissistic family system? And also in those comments, if you want, it's always optional, how did that work out for you when you moved far away? Did it work out well? Did it not work out as well as you thought? Now, I have no doubt that moving physically, geographically far away works really well for some folks, to not having to deal with the day-to-day stuff of toxic relationships and just the toxic exposure of sharing the same space or even same town as someone who has been such a source of pain for you. When you are managing any kind of narcissistic relationship, a universal truth is that if you didn't have to deal with it on a daily basis, ultimately, you will be healthier. It's a toxic situation. Exposure to toxins makes us sick. So if you're geographically far away, it seems logical that you would feel better. I know of people who, after a breakup from a narcissistic relationship, if they didn't have the issue of minor children, which makes it impossible to move away, would have moved far away, across the country or to another country. People leaving toxic family systems who, as soon as they are old enough and have the money, get out of there, even though they may have to live really close to the bone for a while. Even people leaving toxic work situations, who may leave the city in which their job was in because the toxic boss or toxic colleagues impacted their experience of living in that place, or just because they needed to find new professional connections and just have a fresh start. So it all seems simple, right? Move away, fix the problem. Unfortunately, it's not so simple. You can't run away from your own head. It kind of comes along for the trip. Moving away feels so strangely simple, right? I'm going to move far away, live far away, and none of this will bother me anymore. I won't have to look at the same stuff. They won't bother me anymore. There's a nugget of truth to this, right? Living in a far away and new place can mean that you may not see the restaurants and street corners and places you went or fought at or associate with bad or good memories. You don't have to live in fear of seeing them or having to navigate the shared friends that you had in that place. It feels like a clean slate, a sort of spotless mind. Same with family. You no longer need to see those places where you had those bad memories or childhood hurts. Many people from toxic families feel stunted when they are back in their hometowns or back in their family of origin homes, and they want to leave. You also have an out when you're invited to family gatherings or any kind of social stuff. Oh, sorry, I live on the other side of the country or the world and I just can't make it. So it really does relieve you of some of those kinds of needing to show up sorts of situations, right? But you want to be careful that you do not think that you move and then presto changeo, it's all good, insta-heal. Narcissistic abuse is not just geographic or related to proximity. It's about the invalidating voices that it leaves in your head and in your soul. It's about self-gaslighting. It's about rumination, self-blame, self-doubt, and self-devaluation. Sometimes people think that they have healed from their narcissistic abuse by moving away, and that it's behind them, a sort of postscript. But that creates a false sense of security. You may have moved far away, and it may feel like you've made your statement, made your change, got the fresh start. But the things that linger, the self-deprecating way that you talk about yourself, the belief that you have to settle or may not deserve true or deep love, or that you have something wrong with you. All of that means when those things are still pouncing in your head, that not only have you not moved away from the narcissist, that they're actually living on right there in your head. So they're still right there with you, practically in the same room, right? There is a reason that this is an important distinction, that moving away isn't really necessarily getting away. Because if you just physically move away from it and don't do the deeper work of recognizing that you are enough, that you were not to blame, that boundaries were and are a good thing to set, and to stop invalidating yourself, then in your new spot, your new city, your new country, whatever, you are then still at risk of replaying the cycle, entering into new narcissistic relationships, perhaps feeling attracted by the familiarity, right? Perhaps because the new narcissists continue to validate those invalidating voices, and being tricked that you've put it all behind you because you moved away, and wondering why you still feel so heavy while you carried the luggage with you to the new place. Social media, text messaging, emailing, video chatting, this has all shrunk the world. And as a result, we are able to stay constantly in touch with people, pretty much no matter where they live. And they are able to constantly stay in touch with us. Wherever you go, unless you have literally gone to live off the grid, the ability of narcissistic folks to stay constantly in touch is a real issue. In some cases, especially if it is sort of a Hoovery stalky situation, it doesn't matter if you live next door or across the planet. They will keep reaching out and bothering you. So it's just not that simple. There also has to be an internal separation. Radical acceptance is such a central element of healing from narcissistic abuse. It was never going to change. You are not to blame. Self-protection is good, and you are not bad for wanting to leave. But above all else, it wasn't and it isn't going to change. That's the nature of narcissistic relationships and personalities. They don't improve. They typically get worse. So I guess they could change because they can get worse, and they often do get worse with age. But you can't just say it. You have to believe it. Putting narcissistic abuse behind you means processing the grief. Grief is like a loan shark. If you try to outrun it without paying your debt, it will find you and beat you up, and still expect ridiculous interest on your pain. You just have to go through the grief, sit in it, feel it, trust the process. And some people struggle with that because they think, well, what the hell am I grieving? I'm glad to have this abusive person thousands of miles behind me. But alas, loss is loss. And it may not be the loss of that person per se, but perhaps grieving the loss of family, of believing in love, of believing in hope, perhaps even grieving old schemas about yourself. Narcissistic abuse steals and takes so much from us. So moving away isn't a bad thing. In fact, in the long run, for many, many people, it's a good thing. But it's not a quick fix. The ghosts follow us, and you have to do that internal work, whether you live next door or on the other side of the planet. There is no rushing the healing process. There's no rush in grief, recovery, and growth. It takes as long as it takes, and it hurts, and it tests you. In an ideal world, you can geographically be distant and do the hard work of healing in that faraway place. It does help to have the space and the time and the distance. It certainly makes it easier. But healing is an inside job, and it's worth it, whether that narcissistic person is in the next room or 12 time zones away. I have known people to join the military so they can get shipped out somewhere far away. I have known people to take on teaching assignments literally on the other side of the planet, people joining all kinds of travel brigades or anything just to get away. People who's the day they graduate from high school already have their car packed so they can move away. However, that's just part one of a very long journey. You got to do the work here before you think that moving away is going to fix it. Thanks again.